I mean, they believe in us, and that's what we needed, is for somebody to actually really believe in us women that we could do this. And then with their belief in us, we believed in ourselves as well.
This is the story of an unconventional community development, of unusual partners coming together to create opportunity. 12 women on welfare dare to call themselves carpenters and set out to turn a ramshackle rooming house into a refuge for their sisters on the street.
I had been working for a couple of years in downtown Victoria with the homeless and at-risk community, and over a period of time a lot happened, but what I realized was I was primarily working with men. That was not unique to Victoria. I talked to people in Vancouver and Toronto and San Francisco, and when you just kind of go into the more obvious places, the soup kitchens and the drop-ins and resources that are out there on the street that everybody knows about are used almost exclusively by men. But the reality was that I knew there were a lot of women downtown in Victoria that were poor, that were living in really unsafe conditions, and that didn't have any place to go.
How would you like it if someone all of a sudden came to you and took your house away, took your car away, took your trinkets or, you know, whatever away, and gave you a sleeping bag or something and said, okay, now start from the beginning now and go find work?
My dream was to create something with them that was what they wanted.
It excited me when I first heard the idea from Janet, and I think it excited me because it married up two things that were important. One was that we needed temporary housing space for women in Victoria. We knew that. But then our tendency is to go to the street and to do things to them rather than to do things with them. And I think Janet has the other approach.
I felt really committed from the beginning of this project to making sure that the voices of the women in the street community were the voices that we were listening to when we figured out what it was we needed to do. That's the place to start. I met 4 women.
A former street worker, an ex-addict and prostitute, an Aboriginal woman, and a woman who'd done time became the core link with the invisible women of the street. They got the word out, and the grassroots circle grew. Women came to a series of free dinners. They ranged in age from 13 to 85, and they listed their needs. A safe women's-only shelter where they wouldn't be judged, within the downtown core, access to counseling, showers, a phone, and especially a kitchen. They wanted a home, not an institution, and they wanted it now.
I kind of rolled my eyes and thought, yeah, right, downtown, we're going to find a house downtown, you know, dream on. I worked on a lot of projects that looked like they were going to be impossible when I started, and this one really looked impossible. It seemed like there wasn't funding available to build emergency shelters, that as much as everybody agreed there was a huge need out there, there was no place to get the money to build an emergency shelter. But there was money available for training, and there was money available for employment, and after looking at a whole bunch of parts of it, I decided that the priority had to be that the women would build it themselves.
We're building an emergency shelter for women, built for women, by women. It's just so great.
The focus, too, is to get people off welfare, to get women off of welfare.
That was a strategic approach that I took to raising the money. Even the far right wing thinks this is a good thing, get people off welfare.
I was on and off welfare since my firstborn, on and off welfare.
We don't have them into the jobs where they're going to be able to support their families. Working into trades or specific skill training or further upgrading in formal education is really important for women because they tend to be the ones supporting the children.
Just to say, oh, I'm off of welfare, like some of the women that don't have kids, they're like, oh, I'm off of welfare. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get there.
We do know if we can keep people employed for a year, their return rate to income assistance is really very low. But getting the skills to gain the employment for the year is what projects like this are about.
The project's goal to get women off welfare and apprenticed in the trades appealed to government. The Provincial Ministry of Skills Training and Labour contributed $250,000 toward training and wages.
The partnerships are a critical piece of making any project happen. One of the things that I've discovered is, but when I approach an organization or a government ministry, whoever it is, for support, it's not always the first person or the most appropriate person who hears and sees the vision. Finding those people sometimes takes a little while, but once you find them, then it's theirs too.
Our role here, I think, was simply to provide a home base of support for the outreach work that Janet and our social planning people were doing. Not a traditional kind of function for a planning department, but one that was obviously clearly needed.
Because it was a project for women, we found, excluding Peter, that it was women that got really excited and inspired by what we were doing and helped us figure out how to use their piece of the system to our benefit.
The Ministry of Social Services played a key partnership role, committing $300,000 annually to operate the shelter before a site had even been selected. This belief in the project brought other partners to the table.
The number of partners in the thing got kind of large. It was almost could have been described as unwieldy. You had about 5 different government ministries, the municipality of Victoria and the feds all involved, and that sort of gets like herding cats after a while. You know, it's kind of hard to hold it all together, but that was the part that I think that I played.
The Downtown Women's Project was born, a $1 million experiment that captured the imagination of 3 levels of government and the community. Sponsor? The Greater Victoria Women's Shelter Society, a non-profit group with experience in housing initiatives. This was a challenge like no other.
Certainly the press has put a very positive slant on it, and I think people are feeling proud that they could have something like this in their community.
Even though the zoning wasn't an issue, right next door there's a not inexpensive condo. Right across the street there are the law courts. And yet, because somehow the way this was done, and because we were clearly improving a piece of property, it slid into the neighborhood. There's something about what we did here that really worked well.
Well, I'm 34 years old, and my oldest boy, Matthew, he's going to be 18 in July. And my oldest daughter, Sarah, she's 16, and she's got an 11-month-old baby girl, Shannon. She's really neat, my granddaughter, my first one. And then I have a 14-year-old son, Simon, and my youngest is Nicole. She's 10. I support all of them. My granddaughter, I support her as well.
When I first heard about the project was at the Single Parent Resource Center. They had a stack of applications, and I picked one up and was just starting to read it. And what really got me was it was with women, and I'd never really found any support in women before.
Before I came to this project, women were negative in my life. They were, like, to me, they were backstabbing or, you know, bitches, or I couldn't trust them.
I guess the counseling and the, you know, life skills that was part of it was really what struck me. I thought, wow, here's something maybe I can stick with and get some support.
I heard it through a friend. Yeah, that she was an addict as well, and a prostitute as well. So, and she's just, you know, trying to get her life straightened out and that. And she says, hey, you know, you should check this out. I'm applying for it. You know, she goes, oh, you got to be a straight person and that. And I said, well, you know, I'm not really. But she says, well, you know, I like problems with drugs and stuff like that. You know, just, you know, caught in the system. So I applied and I got it. Here I am. It's great.
The first day of the training, open the front door, and they have this big staircase going straight up, and you can't see what's up there until you get up the stairs. So I just remember opening the door and hesitating because thinking I can't do this, you know, fear.
Counseling and group process are key parts of this program, absolutely necessary. There's no way that a group of people who have been as abused and as beaten down as these women have been, could successfully even work as a group without a lot of communication skills, without a lot of work on self-esteem, without a lot of opportunity to come to understand they're not to blame for arriving at the place that they are in their lives, that there's a societal context to that, but that at the same time there's a certain amount of work that they have to do and they have to be willing to do to make it possible to move on. The fact that we've come from the outset with a feminist perspective has been built right into the design of the program.
Sponsors knew hiring the right combination of skilled staff was crucial to the women's success. They advertised for a counselor, life skills coach, and construction skills trainer.
When we advertised for staff, we didn't anticipate having an Aboriginal woman apply, but when Darcy was one of the people that we interviewed, it felt like a great opportunity. We didn't even begin to guess at what Darcy's contribution would be.
I bring a spiritual aspect to the group where I really believe it's important to develop all four components of a human being, which is a physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental.
In the beginning, we were doing a lot of dealing with crisis that came up.
What I try to do, in my work is to help the women recognize that everything you need to know, you already know, and it's already in there in you. And you need to develop a belief about yourself. Oh, this is hard. Okay, so instead of saying this is hard, what you can say is what?
I'm having a hard time.
I'm having a hard time doing what?
Writing my cover letter.
Why?
Because I don't know what to write, Darcy.
You identified it just a couple of sentences ago. It's hard for me to say nice things about myself. Start acknowledging the skills and abilities you have and start owning them. But part of doing the personal development is to realize that we do have an impact on the people around us and that we don't live, walk, or talk in isolation. That everything I think, everything I say, everything I feel and do has power and can help or hinder. And I think often, we're not aware of the power we have.
In the training part of the program, I was the construction skills trainer, so I worked with the women for the first 4 months at developing their construction skills.
Safety is always an issue.
It was a learning process for me too. I mean, I'd never worked with this target group. I've taught before, but this was really challenging because they had a history of problems that were completely foreign to me. A lot of them had such low self-esteem, they didn't feel that they had anything to contribute. They didn't think that they could make it. They were terrified of the power tools to begin with. They had math phobia.
Like when I first started this program, I had a hard time subtracting, especially if there was zeros up there. Remember that? I couldn't even do that.
It's very ironic because we hadn't even planned on hiring a math teacher. Allison phoned me up and said, "You've made a mistake. You need a math teacher too." You know from talking to the women that she just became a critical piece of the programming in all kinds of unanticipated ways. I mean, one of the things that never occurred to any of us was that the level of anxiety attached to math would bring up all kinds of things for them that had nothing to do with math. To be able to turn that around and have the women